Oh, it is 7.
We're waiting for the technology.
Oh, 7. We always have to look at our cell phones for the select board to make sure we're starting right.
Recording in progress.
There you
we
go.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to open this meeting officially because we have a quorum of our library building committee, and because this is a hybrid meeting, I just have to announce that, so we're doing that. But we do have to have a roll call attendance for our membership. I'm Judy Connors Tarver, and I'm the chair of the library building committee.
John Greco, construction representative.
Janetos.
Sandy Fife from Capital Budget.
Dorcas McGurran from the Board of Select Board, excuse me.
Okay, thank you. So welcome. We appreciate your attendance. And, how can I forget you? I was focused on the voting people. Go.
Joseph Brick, Yarmouth Town Libraries.
Mindy Harrington, Yarmouth Town Libraries.
Who are very valuable participants. We also have a couple of people up here on the panel who have been working with us. Matt Oudens is from Oudenzello Architecture, which is our firm, and Tim Arnold is from our owner's project manager's firm, Accenture. And an owner's project manager represents us in the whole process. So if we don't catch something, that's their job.
Can't read those now.
All right, so now I guess I can keep going. So thanks for coming. This is a pretty significant project for a town. And just a couple of housekeeping things. There is a sign-in sheet, and we would like you to sign in, mostly for a head count so we can keep track of how many people have participated in our sessions. And there are cards all over the place, little index cards. If you would like to make comments about anything that happens today, there's a return box right over there in front of Dorcas, and you can just drop them in. You can use several cards for different topics if you want, but those are all over the place. And the whole committee will review the comment cards. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to bring you up to date on the activities of the Library Building Committee and to hear feedback from you as our process continues. We'll start with a little project review, and that will be followed by a presentation by Matt. And then we're going to have an open period. You can see the boards around the room, and we will circulate with you so that you can ask questions and look more closely at what has been presented. So how we got to this place was there have been many studies and proposals dating back at least 20 years, and some of you have been through those decision-making processes yourselves. The most recent study presented to the Select Board in May 2024 identified several very significant concerns, particularly related just to the building structure. We have insufficient space to store books and media. The building systems are antiquated, meaning HVAC, electricity, those sorts of things. The buildings are not fully ADA compliant, and we don't have the space and systems because of those limitations to support different programs and technology. So in determining the needs for a library to serve the entire town, for a town of our population, which is 25,000 and which swells to 65,000 seasonally, and based on our collection, it was recommended that we have a library of 25,000 square feet. That has been modified, as you'll hear in the presentation. And that new library should be on a site which affords parking, outdoor programming space, and possible expansion opportunities in the future. So our committee interviewed 9 applicants, and it was a pretty grueling interview, I think. And we chose Avendello to move forward with us on this project because we deemed them to be a really good fit with us and the community. And then we moved into site selection. We reviewed 8 sites, and except one of those is already owned by the town. So an environmental study was done by Pear Corporation, and then the committee reviewed that. A public session was conducted on June 17, and we heard lots of feedback from some of you who are in the room tonight. The Simpkins Field site was selected. It was presented to the Select Board on June 24, and they approved it. So now we're moving into the conceptual design phase, and this session is going to mirror what we did with site selection. So this site is very generous in size, and we're going to have to consider the impact on other past uses and potential uses of the area, the surrounding residents, and then we're going to also have to take into account access to the building, and that will include vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, anybody who wants to come in. The other kind of influence we have on our decision-making is that we are working with the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners to secure grant support. And we need to meet a deadline in December to move forward to the next phase. And that's really influencing the pace that we're moving at. So I'm going to turn this over to Matt Oudens, and he's going to give you a rundown of what's happening. I think Mindy is taking care of some technology needs. And Matt will go through the various proposals, and we're going to hold questions till the end, but we welcome your questions.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Judy. Thank you all for coming out tonight to learn about what we've been talking about with the LBC for the last month or so. My name is Matt Oudens with Oudens-Ello Architecture. Before we talk about you, I wanted to talk a little bit quickly about who we are so you understand who it is the town hired. Oudens-Ello Architecture is a 12-person office in Boston. We were founded in 2007. My business partner and I spent 10 years prior to that working for a mid-sized firm in Boston where we focused on cultural projects, including libraries. My first library project was a new branch for the Boston Public Library in the neighborhood of Allston, and it really gave me a tremendous appreciation for the transformative nature of public libraries, for their communities, the incredible resource they are. Since founding our practice, we have continued to focus on cultural projects with a strong focus on public libraries. This is a kind of cross-section of a number of the library projects that we've worked on over the years, most of those in Massachusetts, but some in other states, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York. They range in scale from 40,000 square feet to 4,500 square feet, and I'll talk about a couple of these in detail. Overall, we've worked on 26 public library projects since 2009, 22 of those, in Massachusetts, 15 of those with the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, the MBLC, through their grant program. And the grant program has changed over the years, as have the MBLC staff, but it has given us a very clear understanding of what the MBLC is looking for. It's given us an opportunity to develop strong working relationships with the MBLC representatives. We have a very healthy exchange and dialogue with them. We don't always agree on things, but we sort of hash things out and we come to agreements with them, with our clients. Every town is different, and so the particulars of that project may mean that things are done a little differently than in a different town. And they're open to those kinds of conversations, and our relationship with them, I think, helps facilitate that. We have 10 completed projects, library projects in Massachusetts, with 3 in construction at the moment. Again, sort of related to our relationship with the MBLC and our understanding of libraries in general, they put out a planning resource guide. This is really intended to be a nationwide planning resource for libraries that establish kind of best practices for planning. This was put out, I think, just before COVID. And of the 14 case studies, they chose 3 of our libraries to include in the book. So we felt, that was some validation that they appreciated the work that we are doing. In terms of our approach to public libraries or public buildings in general, and this really predates COVID, we feel very strongly that public buildings need to have a strong relationship to outdoor space. Whether that's visual, it's just, allowing for daylight and views, or it's actual physical connections to the outdoors. We think that kind of meaningful connection, whether it's a covered porch, like at the Norwell Library in that lower left corner, or a reading room with tall windows overlooking a pond, like in Eastham in the upper right, reading gardens, like that central image or the lower right image. Those kinds of spaces make public libraries in particular, I think, more rewarding for the people that use them, including staff. And we think that, we do a lot of public work in general, or work with a public audience, museums, libraries, other cultural projects. And that's a really important thing, that the kind of public engagement, the creating spaces that are pleasant for people to be in, make you want to stay longer, come back. So those are kind of the things that we think about as we're designing buildings for public use. Just quickly touching on a couple of completed projects. This is the Eastham Library that some of you may know, completed in 2016. This is a LEED Gold certified net zero energy building. It's 100% on-site renewable by way of solar. It was the first net zero public library in Massachusetts. It's won a number of awards, and in addition to accommodating the program, this is a 17,500 square foot addition to a 300 square foot historic building. It also took very seriously the restoration of the wetland buffer between this building and the pond. It is adjacent to a deep water kettle pond, and so moving parking from behind the building, restoring the wetlands, thinking very carefully about stormwater management, all sort of went into the thinking about how this building was organized. A couple of images, that's the original historic building, which we relocated and added onto. The building is organized and shapes, organized around a central courtyard that is used as a kind of reading garden. It's a sloping site, so we had program tucked in under the wing that faces the pond, and we really tried to push as much of the library program towards the pond as we could, open up views, make that connection as strong as possible, so that when you're in that library, you feel like you're kind of in the trees overlooking the pond. And it's a really lovely spot. A different kind of context, the Webster Public Library. This was completed in 2016. This is a little bit more urban. I think what's interesting about this one for me, and also I think relates it a little bit to your project, is that it is adjacent to a public green. The town hall is sort of behind us in this image. And so it's an important civic building. It has a presence that is important on that public green. And we wanted the building, the porch, the steps, that edge of the green to be active. We wanted to provide a place for people to sit when there's something happening on the green. We wanted the library to be a prominent front that you see as you're coming down Main Street. And so those are the kinds of things that we think about. We think beyond the limits of a given site. We saw this as a kind of anchor to this end of Main Street. So we thought about its position in town beyond just, accommodating library program. Interior, this is a more compact building. It's 21,000 square feet. It was really important to bring natural light into the middle of the building, so there's a skylight that does that into this kind of centrally lit atrium. They also had a very small staff. At the time that we designed it, they had 3 full-time staff for a 21,000 square foot building. And so it was super important that they be able to see everything. So there's a huge amount of transparency in that upper left image. The sort of yellow-green wall is the children's room. From that desk, you can see all the way down the other end of the library to that lower right image, the periodicals room, the study rooms. So there's a tremendous amount of visibility, and that's hugely important, I think, in public library design. The Norwell Public Library, sort of halfway between here and Boston, is completely surrounded by wetlands. It's a very unusual condition. There are no buildings around it. It's literally on an island in the middle of wetlands, surrounded by woods. And so we wanted to celebrate that context. It's like Eastham. It's a mass timber framed structural system, so all exposed wood beams that sort of ties it to that wooded context. It's a single-story building, 21,000 square feet, so it's similar in size to yours. This was a LEED Silver project, and it really was intended to kind of celebrate that context, and from the inside, really make you feel connected to the surrounding woods. The right-hand image on the bottom is the adult stack and reading area. Image on the left is the children's room. So they're treated kind of equally. You come in to, through an entry courtyard into a lower ceilinged lobby, and then as you move through the building, you emerge into these rooms with huge windows and great natural light. And that the treatment is the same for the kids as it is for the adults. They get the same kind of benefit from that type of space and the enjoyment of that. The last library I'm going to touch on is the Belmont Public Library, which is currently in construction. This is set to open this year. This is our largest library project to date. This is a 40,000 square foot new building. Again, this one had some wetland conditions, and this is not to suggest that you do on the Simpkins property. It just happens that we end up seeing a lot of wetlands on our projects. This one, like Norwell, like Eastham, sort of leaned into that and was trying to celebrate that context. Like Webster, this is a little bit more urban. It's on a busy street, but it faces a town green. It backs up onto this wetland landscape where there's a stream, and so we've developed a kind of wetland garden that the library opens out to in the back. It's organized around this central library commons. This is the adult level up here. You can see the meeting room. The entire back wall of the meeting room is glass, so when you enter the building, you see through it completely out to this wetland garden in the back. And so there's a lot of transparency, and again, the site factors in pretty heavily to our thinking. So that brings us to you and Simpkins Field. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this property. We were less so, and so we started with these aerial views, and when we went out there for our site visit, we met our landscape architect and walked around to get a sense and realized just how vast this site is. It is enormous. And there, unlike most of our sites, there isn't a whole lot to kind of grab onto when you're in the middle of the site. We like context. We like things that we can sort of identify as key attributes that we can sort of tap into. And this one, we found ourselves kind of clinging to the edges. We were talking next to the trees because there was some scale and some shade, and we didn't feel as exposed as standing in the middle of the field. And so it took some time, I think, to sort of develop an attitude about this. But I'm going to walk you through some of our initial thinking, and then we'll look at our initial kind of library planning options. So this is actually comprised of two parcels that are both town-owned. Parcel 50, which is on the left, which is where the fields are. Parcel 60, which is where the Bridgewater State Building is. They are two different parcels, but they are commonly owned by the town, and so the property line in the middle is less important than the surrounding property lines. The Simpkins School residence is just to the south, and there's, as you all probably know, this sort of odd-shaped triangular site between Route 28 and Wood Road, where there's a fireman's memorial there, directly across from Town Hall. So when we look at this as a possible site for a building, even though it's a commonly owned, sort of combined two parcels, there is also an access road. So maybe more importantly than the property line that divides those two parcels, the access road kind of serves as a bifurcating element between one side and the other. So the green shaded area is what we see as the sort of potential place for a new library. And as I said, it's quite large. So we were thinking, well, where do we put a 24,000 square foot library? That's now been reduced to 22,000 square feet, by the way. We started thinking about putting it close to Route 28. You know, as good urban planners, we think an important civic building should be close to the street, easily accessible, highly visible. But putting it up at Route 28 across from Town Hall, which makes some sense for these kind of two civic buildings, puts all of the landscape, the potential future town common behind it, which doesn't really work very well in terms of its visibility from the main road. So we kind of ruled this out as a logical place for the library. We thought, should we push it back, put it in the middle of the property? But that left just kind of three sort of unconnected outdoor spaces that didn't feel like any one of them was going to be successful, wasn't going to be big enough for outdoor events. And so, again, we ruled this out as a possibility for the library. And also, the library feels, frankly, a little bit untethered out there. It's not on the road. It's not on the access road. It's starting to feel a little too far from Route 28. Next, we looked at the western edge. Should we, as we did when we walked the site, should we kind of hug the edges? But this puts it right in the backyards of the private residences, which I can't imagine would be received well. And again, it doesn't really put the library in a place where it's easily accessible. It's far from the access road. It's not particularly close to Route 28. And so again, for those reasons, we thought this wasn't quite right either. This is sort of the Three Bears approach. So then we got to the back of the site, and at a conceptual level, this made some sense to us. Kind of like that first option, we have two opposing civic buildings facing each other. Route 28 divides them, and the town common is in between them. And that's a pretty common typology in towns. You know, you see a town green with important buildings around it, sometimes facing each other. And so that made some sense to us, although we had some reservations about the distance of that site from Route 28 and accessibility. It's accessible from the access road, certainly, but again, it felt a little far. But we wanted to explore this a little bit. So we developed two options, and you'll see all of the options, by the way, are that we're going to be talking about tonight are illustrating a single-story building. So this represents, to scale on this site, what a 22,000 square foot single-story building would be. The reason we think single-story makes sense is we have the room to do it. Single-story buildings are much more efficient than two-story libraries for two reasons. One, staffing is more complicated on a two-story library. It's always difficult to think who's going to be upstairs. Who is it that's going to have to use the elevator and the stair to get where they're going? You know, do you inconvenience families and kids, or do you inconvenience adults and seniors? It's always a little bit of a trade-off. A one-story building is universally accessible without any issue. It kind of puts everybody on a level playing field. It doesn't obligate you to maintaining paying for an elevator, maintaining it, paying for stairs. And so there's a kind of efficiency, really, to a single-story building. So all of these are looking at single-story layouts. And all of these also are color-coded, and I don't think you can read the labels here probably on the screen, so I'll give you the cheat sheet. Yellow is adults, red is community, light blue is children, that kind of medium blue is lobby, and then the two small spaces, the green and the kind of grayish blue, are teens, the green, and staff. All of these schemes are kind of three wings, effectively, radiating around a lobby. And we've done this for a couple of reasons. One, the width of all of these bars is about 50 feet. And we find 50 feet to be a convenient number in terms of planning, or at least a good starting point. 50 feet is about as far as you want to go with a simple span. Column on one side, column on the other side, no columns in the middle. You want column-free space because you want flexibility. You want to be able to put stacks and furniture wherever you want them. You don't want to have columns in the middle. This one is a great case in point, that create obstructions that make laying out furniture and stacks difficult. And so that 50 feet is a reasonable dimension that gives you a lot of room to work. The other advantage is that with a 50-foot wide wing, you're never more than 25 feet away from windows, natural light, views, and we think that's really important, especially in public libraries. So these are, as a starting point, these are all set up as a kind of 50-foot wide wing. And so they're these kind of longer, more attenuated. Within each of these wings, it's not just one big room. This yellow shaded area is made up of, I think, probably 10 different spaces, or more actually. Some will be big, some will be small study rooms, big open reading areas. But we've kind of grouped all of those rooms into a single sort of colored bubble for the purposes of these diagrams. So all of the schemes that you're going to see are taking the same approach. So this first scheme puts the lobby in the middle. It's accessible both from a drop-off on the access road and from parking. We think that there's an opportunity, a duty almost, to connect this building in a meaningful way to Route 28 and to Town Hall. If you're at Town Hall, you're here to do some business, having the library across the street can be a really good benefit. You can kill two birds with one stone. Maybe you have business in both. Maybe you're going to a meeting at the library. Maybe you just want to check out a book or meet with a friend. Those kinds of relationships between public buildings we think are important and should be encouraged and enabled in a way and made walkable. We think there's so much happening at this intersection that we think a crosswalk, granted it's a state road and that's a heavy lift, but a crosswalk and a meaningful connection from Town Hall to the library is worth exploring, and we think helps connect the library to the town in a way that we think is important. For that reason, putting the library all the way back at the back of the site feels a little bit far for us. But what we like about this is that we think the library organization works well. Communities, the community room, and actually all of the community program in all of our libraries really is designed to be accessible off hours, so you have maximum flexibility. We want the library to work in a way where you can close the library program areas, children's room, teen room, adult room, but still have access to meeting space, multiple meeting spaces, different sizes, bathrooms, a kitchenette, all the things that go along with that program that make that usable and available to the town, even when the library is not open. That's, I think, a common thing in all of our public library projects. It's a priority for the MBLC. And so all of these schemes take that into consideration. In this case, the lobby and the community wing would be accessible off hours. The other two wings would be securable on either side of the lobby. And this community space would be accessible both from a drop-off and from parking. Moving on to the next one, this was just a different arrangement of program, but what it's starting to do, and as you saw in a couple of the previous examples that we showed you, like Eastham or Norwell, it's using the building to start to define some outdoor space. So even though this faces a kind of larger open landscape, we're suggesting that this immediate landscape of the building has a different character. It's more intimate. It's immediately accessible, in this case, from the community wing here, the adult wing, the children's wing. And so we think that's both a visual amenity but also a programmatic amenity. In this diagram, the lobby is at the corner, again, equally accessible from drop-off and from parking. Here, the community wing is more visible. You can see it from Route 28. It's kind of on this path that we're showing from Town Hall. And so it's a little bit more accessible than in the previous illustration. So once we did that, and as I said, we felt both of those were a little far for our comfort level back away from Route 28. We started thinking about the town common. Now, we are not the designers of the town common, but we know that What we do is going to set the stage for what comes later. And we think the town common is a really important thing for the town, and it's an important part of a successful library, ultimately. I think that kind of activity next to the library, we think, has a great relationship. We cannot take credit for this suggestion. This is from a 2008 study that was done for the town common, which is closing this section of Wood Road. Wood Road actually connects out to 28 here at the sort of wide end of this triangular property. What this does, it's a simple move, but it eliminates one of the curb cuts along 28. There are a lot of roads kind of coming in all at the same place in this area around Town Hall. So it simplifies the traffic patterns a little bit. But I think more importantly, it puts the town common fully on Route 28 instead of just at the tip of it, kind of touching 28. So it gives that town common greater presence. Again, we're not the designers of the town common, but we want to tee up the town common for success, and we think it makes for a more successful library. The other thing is, we think that this is a tremendous amount of area and gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of setting that up for different sized events, from Seaside Festival to smaller events that you might have. And when you look at this, you see, that makes sense. That's a very rational, open, green space, and what's left is a little bit less defined. It's got the curvy access road. It's got this stand of trees, which we'll talk more about in a minute. And so we actually saw this side area as really great potential for the library. And as I said earlier, we look for things in a site that are those opportunities that we can kind of grab onto for inspiration. And we see two. One is the long edge of this kind of seam between what we see as potential library buildable area and town common. That frontage on town common, like the Webster Library we talked about, we think is really important. It helps activate the common, and it helps bring life to the library too, and it makes the library really visible. To see the library across town common with an important frontage along the green, we think is a positive thing. The other thing that we gravitated to, as I mentioned already when we first were out there, is that grove of trees in the southeast corner. It doesn't look particularly special. It's a little bit overgrown underneath, but it's actually quite nice. It doesn't have much of a middle story, so if you cleaned up some of the bittersweet and the poison ivy, it actually is a pretty pleasant little grove. It gets natural light. And right now, aside from the trees on Wood Road, it is the only shade that you can get at Simpkins Field. And how nice would it be for that to start to be one side of some open space that is formed by the library and these trees to create a kind of more intimate space. So we saw these as a good starting point for exploring options here. One last thing about the town common. We do think that there's an opportunity, and again, we're not the designers of the town common, but we think there is a real opportunity here to improve the town common, but also improve the Simpkins School residences. Frankly, it's very exposed back here behind the Simpkins School residences. There's nothing between them, the asphalt parking, and this expansive field. And it feels, we were there it wasn't even that hot. It was in the low 80s, and it just felt kind of scorching back there. And a line of trees, a simple line of trees between the parking lot of Simpkins and the field would provide a little bit of shade. It would give you something green to look at aside from mown grass. And it starts to create a little bit of a buffer between public activities and private residences. We even think that, there's plenty of room to create, whether it's paved parking or it's overflow parking, some additional parking with another layer of trees, again, more buffer between the residences and the activity of town common, that maybe provides some additional parking for the ball field or for special events. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be paved, but all this to say that we think that there's room for improvement to the town common, to the residences behind, without compromising the use of those fields. It's still leaving a very large open space for all kinds of events. We also think improving the landscape buffer along the west side would, in a similar way, benefit the neighbors and kind of buffer them from the activity of the town common. So from there, we're going to look at three options that are focused on the area that I just described. So the first one, again, like the others, it's a kind of spoked arrangement, a radial arrangement radiating out from a central lobby. In this case, we've located the community and adult wings on this long edge of the town common, so really great frontage, possibly even covered outdoor space that's usable when the library is not even open by people that are at a fair or something. There's some shade that they can use. The library becomes a kind of backdrop for those sorts of events, but it's also space then that's available to patrons when the library is in use. It puts the community wing up front. It is public, it's visible, it's easily accessible. It's a short walk, across the road and into that space or into the reading garden, into the lobby, multiple points of entry here. Again, a centrally located lobby that gives you access from parking, pedestrian access if you're coming from Route 28, access from Town Common, and then from that central point with sort of central oversight, you have the adult wing, children and teens, and community radiating out. So the community wing and children's wing, then forming this L with the trees, start to shape outdoor space, which has a very different scale and character than the much more open town common. And that we think that would be a real benefit for the library. The trees create a sort of natural environment that's nice to look at. It provides some shade, it provides some noise buffer from 28, and it makes that space, I think, special and unique to the library. The other two are kind of variations on this same idea. So a lot of the same ideas, it's just slightly different organizations. This one keeps the adult wing on the green. It puts the entry porch at the corner. So again, covered outdoor space adjacent to the town common, access to the entry and lobby from parking, but also potential pedestrian access either along the town common side or through the garden into that lobby space. Here, the community wing is located in this wing, again, easily accessible off hours from parking with securable wings for adults and children and teens. And again, using the building to kind of start to shape this kind of private landscape for the library. And then lastly, again, a similar approach, but this one takes a different attitude about the community room and more assertively puts it kind of pushing out into the town common. So it makes this more public. It's not taking a back seat. It's kind of out there saying this is an important piece of building for the town that is clearly visible. You see what's happening as you drive by when there are events at night. You see activity. It has great access to this landscape, and the rest of the building is doing a lot of the same things that we talked about with kind of creating outdoor space, putting the lobby in a strategic location with supervision of the various wings. So before we open it up to questions, I just want to make sure everybody understands where we are in the process. Building projects take a long time. We are at the very beginning of a long process. This is a 6-month study. We're already a month or so in. As Judy said, we're due at the end of December to submit a package to the NBLC. There are specific requirements that demonstrate that we are complying with the grant. They review it to make sure that we've complied with the grant. There's a little bit of give and take during that review period where they ask us questions. They may ask us to make a couple of changes before they say, okay, this is good, we're comfortable with this. Then it moves on to town meeting, and the hope is that a yes vote at town meeting allows us to continue into design. At that point, the NBLC would release their funds. And at that point, we start, which is here in this bar chart, 12 months of design. So we have 6 months of preliminary design that's happening between now and December. We're anticipating another public forum sometime between now and then, again, to solicit feedback. But, even after the MBLC review, the town meeting, there is still 12 months of design with multiple opportunities for community engagement along the way. So this is the first, but certainly not the last opportunity that we have to hear from the public what things are important to them, what they like, what they don't like. But this is not meant to be a voting situation, but we want to hear what people think. We want to take questions, sort of set the record straight on any misconceptions, and use that to help us develop our work to submit to the MBLC in December. After the 12-month design period, there's usually 2 months of bidding where we select a contractor, and then roughly 18 months of construction, give or take. So that puts us opening 32 months after town meeting, assuming we start right away, which is, I can't do the calendar math that quickly. It's about 3 years, right? So it puts us into late 2028, early 2029, I think, for opening. So we are at the very beginning of a fairly long process, which is typical for us, but maybe not for everybody in the room. So with that, we are happy to take questions. These are the 5 schemes that we just talked about. They are also on the boards. So thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is open it up for questions, first from you folks here in the room, and then I think we might have a question from our online participants. And when we finish the questions, we're going to kind of break up and just meet you around these various, they're all the same, but there are 2 in here, 1 in the hallway, and we'll float around and chat with you. If you have other questions, if something's not clear about the presentation, we can fill in some details if we can. And we do encourage you to fill out any kind of comment that you have. So it was very interesting. We had a similar session this afternoon, and the comments that we got, some of them I don't think we would have anticipated at all. So that's the beauty of this kind of a session, is that you draw attention to things that haven't yet occurred to us. So I'm going to open up the podium to anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment. Yes. Yeah, and please identify yourself when you come up to the mic.
Hi, my name is Dr. George Bavino. I'm the chair of the library board, and I am so excited, and we are so excited about this. The only question I have is the access from town hall to the library. How tough is that going to be for us to get that done?
You mean across the street?
Yes.
So I have been in touch with Amanda Lima, who is our town engineer. It's going to be tough because it's a state route. So that's why I wanted to give her the 30 whatever month lead time that it is. And we may not get what would be ideal for crossing there, so we may still be, doing that to get across the street. But she has been alerted to that, also to sidewalk conditions on the south side. I don't think there's sidewalk right by the field, but as you get over to the trees, it's very narrow and overgrown, and you would have to almost balance your way on that sidewalk, but it's there. So those would be things that engineering and highway in the town departments would be interested in, but also DOT.
Right. Are there other options that we could look at, or we don't know that yet?
What somebody was saying to me, a bridge or a tunnel.
There we go. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you. But we're very excited about this. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Steven Singer. I actually had a great idea about that. I recently saw a story on
Excuse me, did you identify yourself? Because I didn't.
Steven Singer.
Stephen, thank you.
I recently saw a story about the designer of the Zachem Bridge, who also did a pedestrian walkway in Boston Common.
Yeah.
So, has anyone thought about a pedestrian bridge?
Well, So we haven't yet, because our focus, our charge from the select board is to carry the library project forward, to develop a library for the whole town.
Sure.
And I love the Zachem Bridge, so that's very cool.
One thing I want to say related to the crosswalk, and I mean, it is a state road. Nothing is easy dealing with the Mass DOT. And I suspect a crosswalk is an easier lift than a bridge. But I don't want people to think that whether that crosswalk or bridge or tunnel happens determines whether or not this is a successful library. It isn't. But we feel, as good architects, good urban designers, that you have to sort of call attention to these things and say, this would be great if you could do this. And if you can't do it now, fine. Maybe you figure out a way to work on it and it happens later, and it becomes part of a more walkable Yarmouth. We think that's important. And so these incremental steps are important. If the library gets built, maybe it gives you more leverage when you're talking to Mass DOT that, you know, you have a real problem now, right? We want to get people from A to B. So I don't think that makes the project any more or less successful. Well, yeah, I mean, it would be great, right? But I think the library can be successful without that. And the hope is that at some point that connection is strengthened, because we do think there's an opportunity there.
With regard to that, your plans are very impressive.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Phyllis Venberg, and I serve on the Disability Commission for the town of Yarmouth. And we worked very successfully with the engineers of the town, the project to redo Route 28. Because at the corner where the Olympia restaurant is, they're going to reconfigure that whole intersection supposedly. And there was a problem with accessibility for those buildings on the corner. So we called the engineering department up, and they actually presented themselves to at our meeting. And they took our suggestions under advisement and reworked that whole intersection with accessibility to those different businesses. So I'm thinking that, why couldn't you folks do the same thing with the DOT? Say that we have a potential issue here, and we're building this great, beautiful building. We want people to be able to access it. So while they're reconfiguring the highway, why couldn't they factor that in? Maybe put one of those blinking pedestrian crosswalk signs or something. So I mean, this is the time to do it. Not till it's all done, but while they're doing all that construction on 28, have them think about that as well. Since this project is obviously going forward, we want to make it accessible at the same time.
For sure.
So that's a curb cut for wheelchairs, and also maybe that blinking, pedestrian sign. So this is the time before they how long that's going to take, but do all that section 28 once and for all. Address it now with them.
So tell me where you were in your project when you initiated this contact.
There was probably about 3 months ago. They did a Zoom meeting with us at one of our meetings, and the engineering firm that was working with the DOT for particularly reconfiguring that intersection, I guess. So they went back to their drawing board and came up with a solution that met everyone's needs. So they're very receptive, because like you said, sometimes things aren't visible. If you're not directly involved with something, it doesn't impact you directly, but it impacts other people, so that's why you need voices. But I was really impressed that they actually listened to our concerns, and we did it. Because that also involves the entrance to the West Dennis Bridge and all of that. So that whole mess that's going to happen will be hopefully not as messy at the end of it, and accessible, so it's not going to impact those businesses, because they were going to reconfigure, and the curb cuts and the height, didn't take all that into consideration, but then they did. They listened to our concerns, and they said, you're right. So they went back and they redrew the plans, and they're going forward with a new set of designs. So I just thought, bring it to the forefront now and have them incorporate all that. Not at the end, but work with them in the process.
Okay,
Good suggestion.
thank you. Well,
You're welcome.
and also congratulations on successfully doing that.
I know, I was really impressed. I can't take credit because Gail Charette, who was the former chair, I'm the chair now, she's disabled, so this is very dear to her heart. And she, looks at all the plans closely. And she said, this is not right. And she went out and contacted this building company, this design company, and they were very receptive. I was really impressed that they were really willing to sit down and listen to us, to our concerns, and go the extra mile and rework it. So that before any more money was spent and have to redo something, it was done right the first time, or hopefully it will be done right the first time. So, thanks to Gail, she really, took it to heart and made a difference.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You can go up again afterwards.
Hi, Maria Dolbear. I have a question on number 4. What is the gray area that's kind of around the community? I'm thinking it's inside the building,
I think it's.
not an open area.
Do you mind pointing on this,
Oh.
on the screen?
I took a picture of
Do you mean this space here?
all that gray.
Oh, it's, I mean, these are diagrams, so it's that, I think, she's talking about, let me just go back to that option. Oh, I don't have it here, so I'm sorry. She was talking about this space here, this kind of interstitial space between the different blocks. We don't know exactly, but it's some sort of, it's circulation,
It's indoor.
it's indoor,
Okay.
but we need a way to get from the lobby to Children's, and so if you imagine this as a glass corridor that has views of the garden on one side and accessibility to the garden, but space, rooms on the other side. It's a single loaded corridor that's getting you back to the Children's wing and access to community wing. That's what it's suggesting. These are not building plans by any stretch yet. We're kind of playing with getting things in the right place, and then the next step is to start to develop whichever one or couple of schemes that we think are the leading contenders, develop those further with actual building planning and laying out specific rooms and corridors and all of the things that support those. Architectural planning. These are more sort of site plans.
Well, and then I noticed because of the layout being different between 3 and 4, that number 4 goes all the way to the east versus like that one that's up there now is a little further west. So that would just be outdoor space.
You're talking about here, the fact
Yes.
that there isn't
Yes.
a wing here, whereas there was in the previous. Yeah, it would be landscaped.
No, you're on number 5. So it
sorry.
would be, no, but it would. Number 3, there, that's the difference. It's a wider area between the blue over to the road.
Here to here, yes.
So that would just be outdoor space.
It would be, yeah, I mean, it would be landscaped, I don't know, it would be green,
Okay,
not paved,
okay. And then
landscaped.
to her comments, working with disability, I have family and friends that use walkers, rollators, and as we go around town, they prefer being able to get right into the building.
Sure.
Not to have a distance, and that's what it looks like this is, pretty close by.
Yeah, and all of these, we're trying to position the entry close to parking
That's
in any
great.
of the schemes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Did you?
One more question.
Sure.
2 more questions. I'm Phyllis Venberg, in case you don't remember. Question number one, does it make a difference in the cost of the project, whether it's closer to 28 and further back?
In the cost of the project?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think so. I mean, it's the same size building. Maybe there's a little bit more site work because you want to create a path that's connecting point A to point B, to get you from the road back to the library potentially. But I think that would really be the only difference in cost. I don't imagine that there's really a cost difference between any of these.
So the only entrance would be the access road that's currently there? You're not going to build another road?
We're not going to build another road. No, the access road exists.
I have
We
friends that
want-
live on Sylvan,
Yeah.
and which butts again, and they're like this, so they're like, oh my God, whatever. No, okay, so I can tell her, rest assured, it's going to be the access road.
I will say one sort of asterisk to they're all essentially the same. The top two, I think, require more immediate investment in additional landscape to make them successful than the bottom three do. Because the bottom, this exists, these exist, none of these trees do, right, in these schemes. But even if these trees weren't there, or if we had to plant these trees to help provide some relief, we're not doing as much planting. Whereas you look at this, you really need more investment in landscape to make the library feel kind of integrated into something and not just a kind of repetition of the condition that is currently behind the Simpkins, where it's just a building, a parking lot, another parking lot, a building. You need that landscape buffer. And so I think those two require a larger investment in landscape to make them successful. So
Now, going forward, I mean, you talked about eliminating that Wood Road, so that would make her street a dead end.
I'm not, well, Wood Road actually connects out here as well.
Because Wood Road goes out to Old Main Street, 28 to Old Main Street. So Sylvan Way, where she lives now, she can take a right and get out to 28, but she wouldn't be able to.
There's,
what we did the other day, right?
So that end of Wood Road would be a dead end. So you're going to have
It's-
two Wood Roads.
I think this might be it
Yeah,
here.
there-
This is the outlet from Wood Road.
Yeah, it goes
28.
behind that,
It's a straight shot.
well, it's not the dentist, it used
Well,
to
the
be
backyard's
Kinlan
right up
Grover
against
there.
Simpkins Field, right.
Well, the Kinlan Grover, whatever it is now, it's condos or something, and they have access from their back parking lot, and there's a little exit there. We went driving around there. We went down Sylvan Road, and then made sure we could get out onto 28. So yeah, it goes straight out. So eliminating that angular road.
So you can get right out beside the Kinlan Grover. You would be able to get out through the Kinlan Grover building? 'Cause
Well,
that's
we
the-
did it. I don't think I did anything illegal.
I thought that was a parking lot for that building, and that there was a back entrance to their lot, or you can access their building from 28. That's what I thought.
Yes.
I didn't think it was a street, I don't know. But anyway, okay, I'll just let her.
Again, I think I said this before, but that, closing that section of Wood Road and squaring off the future town common doesn't have to be part of this project. In fact, it's not, right? That's not in our budget. It's a kind of observation. As I said, we tend to overstep our bounds a bit and look beyond the site because we think, first of all, we can't help ourselves because we're designers, but we think those things make projects better. And so you can't always tackle them as part of this project, but knowing that could make a better town common, I think is worth talking about. And it doesn't make the library less successful if we can't do it, or if we can't do it now.
No, at least I can go home and tell her there's not going to be a road behind her house.
Right.
She'll sleep
Pretty
tonight.
safe. And Stephen's back.
Steven Singer again. Two follow-up questions. Touching on what you were just talking about, as nice as your design is with all that landscaping and trees along the borders, didn't you say earlier that you're not designing the town common?
We are not.
Okay, so that's all theoretical.
Well,
We should only really concentrate on the library.
we should, but there is a landscape component to a library project, right?
Of course.
Right. So what I was saying is, in order for libraries here and here to be more successful, they need an investment in landscape that doesn't exist.
Sure.
And I think these already have some landscape that they can capitalize on. They need a little, obviously they need some landscaping. It's not,
Right.
we're not, we're not saving all that money in landscaping, but there is a bigger investment, we think, in the first two to make them successfully feel integrated into the site.
Okay. Secondarily, you mentioned it was starting out at 24,000 and it's now 22,000. Can you address that?
Yeah,
Good question.
The building program, and this is true whenever we start a project like this, any project. In this case, there was a firm that was hired about a year ago to develop a library building program. We get that document, it's usually a couple 100-page document, and we sort of try to digest it. The first thing that we noticed was when they translate that, the written document and all the written descriptions of each space, which include area requirements, square footages, they then usually compile that into a single-page spreadsheet that lists all of those numbers and adds it up at the bottom. And there were math errors. So that was the first thing, correct the math errors. Second thing was there were some conditions that seemed unusual to us, like there were 10 single occupancy meeting or study rooms that were only 37 square feet, which doesn't actually meet accessibility in terms of how you lay out a room. And so we knew that they needed to be 50 square feet, not 37 square feet. And so are we doing 10 at 50 square feet and increasing the size of the building? Are we reducing the number? And there were gaps between, there were a lot of single occupancy rooms. Then there were some rooms that were for 10 or 12 people, but there weren't rooms in between for a group of 4. So it was that kind of thing. And this was not just us. This was working with the staff and working with the MBLC. And we had a couple of rounds of combing through the program, asking questions, getting clarifications from staff, getting input from the MBLC. And that led, plus the math corrections, led to tightening up things by about 2,000 square feet. It's not a huge amount in a 22 to 24,000 square foot building, but every square foot costs money, and so we think it's a positive thing that it's slightly smaller, but still accommodates the goals that the program set out to do. So that's effectively what we've been doing on the program for the last several weeks.
Wonderful. And are you, as the committee, going to share with us, do you have a preferred of these, or do you not want to do that now? You want our input?
Oh, we don't, because we will be meeting later this month because we wanted to collect the input from the public and, we'll still be collecting it until we meet again on the 28th. So any comments that come in digitally or by snail mail, however they come, we will incorporate those into our conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
George Bovino, Library Board. I use the library every week. I want you to talk to me about parking. Is there extended parking now with this?
What is it you want to know about parking?
Is there going to be more?
Well, there is going to be, parking always ends up just ruining the conversation,
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go back and sit down.
No, parking is always a little bit of a dance between what the zoning bylaw requires, what the site allows, and what seems reasonable.
Right.
I was on the planning board in my town for about 6 years, and we, as a board, never were that comfortable with the zoning requirements for parking. In a transit-oriented town, I live in Brookline, Massachusetts, which has a great transit system. We're close to Boston. So why are we building so much parking when we have this, whatever you might think about the T. And so we were always open to looking at ways to reduce parking.
Ooh.
But provide enough parking so that people aren't complaining that they can't find parking.
Right.
And so, like I said, it's a little bit of a dance between satisfying zoning requirements. And zoning doesn't typically list libraries in their parking, in the uses, right? It's usually, it falls somewhere in between business use and assembly use. And assembly use usually is things like movie theaters and restaurants where there's a high density, or churches where there's a high density of seating.
Sure.
And they do 1 car for every 3 occupants. And if you use that logic, it means you have a tremendous amount of parking for a library that really doesn't need that much. The MBLC uses a different metric, which is 1 space for every 400 square feet. So if it was a 24,000 square foot building, that's 60 spaces. That feels like a reasonable lot.
I'll just get there early. Thank you for your answer. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, that's a lot more.
With regard to that, I think you need to factor in the common
Yeah.
Yeah.
and all the parking and the use in the common and not necessarily just in the library.
Yeah.
Because you don't want all the library spaces being filled up with people not using the common.
Yeah. So a couple of things I'll point out related to parking, and this is early. We haven't spent a lot of time thinking about parking, and we need to. We've got to come up with that number that we can try to go to the town and say, does this work? Does this meet your requirements? We've sort of held this as the place for library parking. We don't know how many spaces that yields yet until we start laying it out with our civil engineer. I mentioned this earlier. I think there's an opportunity, without really compromising the use of town common, I think there's an opportunity to gain some additional parking. And this is about the same size as the Simpkins lot. So I don't know what that parking count is, but you can see cars here. That's a pretty good number of spaces. And that could be paved parking. It could be reinforced grass that is overflow parking for events. Similarly, there's a pretty good sized lot behind the Bridgewater State Building. You could easily double the size of that, again, either with paved parking or with reinforced turf for overflow parking for town common events. I didn't mention these, but this is actually 2 individual lots behind lots that are on Old Main Street here that are part of the town-owned property. Half of that is wooded, but it allows us to even potentially get a little more. So all of this to say, I think there's room to get parking. I think there's plenty of room to get overflow parking for big events where you don't want paved parking, but you want to be able to get a bunch of people for the Seaside Festival to park here. And then paved parking for the library that's adequate for its needs, including, special events and, programming that might have 130 people and that kind of thing. But again, for those things, maybe taking advantage of some of these other outlets.
Maria Dolbear again. You had said at the beginning that there were interesting comments at the meeting earlier today. Were there any that we haven't asked that would be to share with us?
I think since the committee hasn't already seen this, hasn't seen this yet, I'm going to not share those, but tune in on the 28th when we review them, okay? So does,
We lost people.
yes, am I?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Zone
got-
2.
But is that red at the bottom, is that someone with their hand up? I can't tell.
No,
No, that,
No.
nobody has their hand up.
yeah.
Okay, so no one online. None of you are interested in speaking? Okay, I'm not seeing any interest there. All right, so what we're going to do then, and first of all, thank you for all your wonderful questions, and I love the energy, and they're coming back to the podium, that's great. Stake yourself out at one of these display easels, and we will float around and see if we can answer any additional questions and explore any of these ideas more completely with you. And I think I have some housekeeping to do just because we did have a quorum, so I just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. So we're closed with this part. We're moving into our informal part. Thank you.
Recording stopped.